Actually, Mr. Mayor, because whilst you like to blame everybody else, you have unfortunately been in this position for 8 years in charge of the police. So I'm sure it's one of the first things you do ask the Commissioner, surely. How many do you think, approximately, I won't hold you to the single numbers, how many police officers do you think London is going to have in a year's time?
Well, Chair, I think the Chief of Staff set out the process of the Met Police Service publishing its budget. They're looking at the numbers in relation to what we've given them. I'm quite clear. I've increased the amount of money they receive from us so we can have more police.
So Sadiq Khan, the Mayor of London, has decided that what the capital really needs right now, what will truly transform the lives of struggling Londoners facing a cost of living crisis, soaring rent, and endemic crime, is £500,000 spent on importing white storks to Dagenham. Yes, you heard that correctly. White storks. Large, leggy birds that went extinct in Britain 600 years ago. Because when people in one of London's most deprived boroughs are worried about paying their rent, feeding their kids, and not getting mugged on the way home, what they are really crying out for is medieval wildlife reintroduction programs. Brilliant priorities there. Sadiq, absolutely spot on. This is going to be spectacular. Quick favor, if you're absolutely loving this madness, hit that subscribe button. Over 94% of viewers haven't yet. It's free, takes a second, and means the world to us. Cheers if you did. Now back to the show. Right, let's unpack this absolute masterpiece of political tone-deafness, because this is a textbook case of how to completely misread the room whilst somehow maintaining you're doing exactly what people want. Sadiq Khan is facing intense backlash over a decision to allocate £500,000 of public funds to a rewilding initiative for rare birds. The controversial spending centres on introducing white storks to the East London borough of Dagenham, which, in case anyone at City Hall has forgotten, is one of the capital's most deprived areas. Not the leafy suburbs. Not Kensington and Chelsea. Dagenham, where the average person is more concerned about whether they can afford next month's rent than whether they'll spot an endangered bird on their morning commute. The funds come from the London Mayor's Green Routes Fund, a £3.84 million pot intended to improve nature access throughout the capital. Which sounds lovely in principle. Access to nature, green spaces, all that good stuff. Except Khan's decided that instead of, say, fixing up existing parks, creating more community gardens, or investing in accessible green spaces that people actually use, is going to spend £500,000 importing birds that disappeared from Britain during the 1400s. The rewilding program also includes beaver reintroductions in various London locations, because apparently what London's waterways really needed was more rodents with engineering degrees building dams everywhere. Susan Hall, who leads a Conservative party in London, has condemned the spending as utterly ridiculous, which feels like a fairly measured response considering the circumstances. She argues the Metropolitan Police, which she says is £260 million underfunded, should be the priority instead. And here's the thing, she's not wrong, is she? The Met is stretched thinner than a politician's promise. Crime rates are through the roof. Response times are abysmal. Police numbers have been cut to the bone. And Khan's response to all of this is apparently yes, but have you considered storks? Ms. Hall insists that Sadiq must get his priorities right as police resources remain stretched. However, the mayor has defended the initiative, framing it as a matter of fairness for urban communities. Oh, fairness. Right. Because nothing says social justice quite like spending public money on reintroducing birds that nobody asked for whilst ordinary people can't afford their heating bills. Sadiq described the rewilding effort as delivering benefits to ordinary Londoners, saying, access to nature is an issue of social justice, and it cannot just be those who live in the countryside who get to share their home with our amazing wild creatures. Amazing wild creatures. He's talking about storks like they're going to pop round for tea and solve the housing crisis. He continued, we are proud to be supporting some fantastic projects through my Green Routes Fund, including the historic reintroduction of white storks and beavers to East London. Historic reintroduction. It's historic because the last time white storks lived in Britain was during the 1400s. They were eradicated due to hunting for food, which tells you something about how desperate things were back then. People were so hungry they ate the storks. And now, 600 years later, whilst people are still struggling to afford food, Sadiq Khan decided it's time to bring them back. The poetry of this situation is genuinely remarkable. Sir Sadiq's scheme marks one of only 2 reintroduction attempts across the country, the other being located at the Knepp Estate in Suffolk. Now, the Knepp Estate is a massive private rewilding project on thousands of acres of countryside. It's the sort of place where reintroducing large birds actually makes sense. Dagenham, on the other hand, is a densely populated urban borough in East London where the average flat has about 3 square feet of outdoor space, and most people's interaction with wildlife consists of dodging pigeons and foxes rummaging through their bins at 3 in the morning. These are not comparable environments. Even those who champion conservation have expressed doubts about the allocation of public money to the scheme, when even conservationists are saying, hang on a minute, you know you miscalculated. One London-based conservationist questioned whether anyone embarking in Dagenham had requested such a project. Sir Sadiq Khan says Londoners should look to the skies. Embarking in Dagenham, most people I know are looking at their bills, they said, which is possibly the most devastating single-sentence summary of this entire debacle. Look to the skies. People can't afford to look anywhere except their bank statements and their ever-increasing rent demands. The conservationist continued. Like a lot of people, I'm just asking, who on earth embarking in Dagenham asked for this? People are worried about rent, food, crime, mold in their flats and buses that do not turn up. They are not sitting at home thinking, do you know what we really need? Imported storks. Mold in their flats. That's a reality of living in much of London's social housing. Damp, mold, structural problems, overcrowding. And the mayor's response is essentially, yes, but look at this lovely bird I've imported from continental Europe. Isn't nature wonderful? Ms. Hall echoed the comments, suggesting residents would prefer additional police presence. She said, if you ask most Londoners, do they want to feel safer with extra police on bobbies on the beat or stalks? I know what the answer would be. Keep us safe, It's not exactly a difficult choice, is it? Would you like to reduce your chances of being a victim of crime? Or would you like to maybe, possibly, if you're very lucky, catch a glimpse of a large wading bird that went extinct before Shakespeare was born? Put it to a referendum. Sadiq. See how that goes. Now, here's where the timing becomes particularly exquisite. The controversy comes as Transport for London prepares to implement a 5.8% increase in fares across the Underground, Overground, and Elizabeth line from March, a rise that exceeds inflation by 1%. So people's travel costs are going up, their wages aren't keeping pace, the cost of living is squeezing everyone, and Khan spending $500,000 on birds. It's almost poetic in its awfulness. Sorry about your tube fare increase. Here's a stork is not exactly the trade-off Londoners were hoping for. Ms. Hall accused the London mayor of mishandling taxpayer funds whilst ordinary Londoners struggle with the cost of living. It's almost like a slap in the face to young people that cannot afford to live here, cannot afford the fares, rent, food, cannot afford so many things, she told The Sun. And she's absolutely right. Average rental costs in the capital stand at £2,265 monthly, according to Office for National Statistics figures from October. £2,265 per month. That's not a mortgage on a mansion. That's average rent. For young people trying to make a life in London, that's utterly crushing. And the mayor's priority is wildlife reintroduction programs. London's crime rate sits at 81 offences per 1,000 residents, with violence and sexual offences being most prevalent. 81 offences per 1,000 residents. That's horrific. That means in a borough of, say, 50,000 people, you're looking at over 4,000 crimes a year. And the police don't have the resources to deal with it properly. But thank goodness we've got storks coming. That'll really help when someone's house gets burgled. Ms. Hall did not hold back in her assessment of Khan's priorities. He's an utter disgrace. He really is. He lives in his ivory tower. He's ferreted around by 4 armed officers. And I think is losing all touch of reality, quite frankly. The sort of reality you and I live, that's for sure. He's so out of touch with normal people. 4 armed officers. The mayor gets 4 armed officers for protection while simultaneously underfunding the police force that's supposed to protect everyone else. The irony is so thick you could cut it with a knife. Khan gets round-the-clock security whilst telling ordinary Londoners that what they really need is better access to nature and maybe some storks to look at. The ivory tower comment is particularly apartment. There's a special kind of detachment required to look at London in 2025, with all its problems, all its challenges, all its struggling residents, and think, you know what would really help? Medieval birds. It's a policy equivalent of Marie Antoinette's let them eat cake, except it's let them watch storks. It demonstrates such a fundamental misunderstanding of what people actually need that it's almost impressive in its comprehensiveness. A spokesman for the Mayor of London, presumably drawing the short straw and having to defend this policy, said, "Bringing back beavers, white storks and other species of London is a wonderful moment for our city. It will allow families and young people to enjoy the beauty and wonders of nature whilst improving local habitats and protecting ecosystems. London should become a place where nature does not just survive, it thrives, and the Mayor wants every Londoner to share in the joys of nature." The joys of nature. The joys of nature are significantly harder to appreciate when you're working 3 jobs to afford rent, when your local bus service has been cut, when you're waiting 6 hours for a police response to a break-in, when there's mold growing in your children's bedroom. Context matters. Nobody, absolutely nobody, is saying nature isn't important. Green spaces are vital. Access to parks and natural environments is genuinely beneficial for mental health and well-being. But there's a hierarchy of needs here, and reintroducing extinct medieval birds is somewhere near the bottom of that hierarchy, well below can afford to eat, can afford rent, and not getting stabbed. The policy isn't wrong because nature is unimportant. It's wrong because it's catastrophically mistimed and misprioritized. What makes this particularly galling is that there are so many ways a Green Roots Fund could have been spent that would have made an actual, tangible difference to people's lives. Refurbishing existing parks in deprived areas, creating community gardens where people could grow their own food and save money, installing green roofs on social housing to improve insulation and reduce energy bills, planting trees along streets to improve air quality in areas with the highest pollution levels. All of these would have delivered access to nature whilst also addressing real, pressing problems that Londoners actually face. But no, storks.